Hello everybody and welcome back to a new video on the channel. It has been a while since I have uploaded and I do apologise for that. I just needed to take a step back, in all honesty. I've had a lot of uni work to do recently, so my focus has been on that. And as some of you probably will know, I've had some personal issues recently and I've had to take care on that and just take a step back and just, chill. Basically, and especially with the way Charlton are going right now as well, it probably was best to step away from that as well, considering that it's just all negative at the moment and it's not a very good thing to have on a consistent basis. So I just needed to take a step back, focus on more important things at the end of the day. But today we are now making our return, and as you can tell by the title of this video, we are revisiting a video that I have done for quite some time over the last couple of years, and of course it is regarding Charlton's out of contract players. We're going to go through every single one of them. There is 17 in total, including out of contract players and players that are at the club on loans. And we're going to decide whether or not these players should stay at the club or whether they must leave. And as ever, I did put it to you guys on a poll on Instagram over every single individual player, and we're going to take a look at that as well and see what you guys think as well. So we're going to go through the players in no particular order, and we begin with Birmingham City loanee Jonathan Leko. In all honesty, I think Leko is just a spitting image of the player that we saw in the Championship, just that little bit worse. I know that he has been played A, out of position a number of times this season, and B, was injured, but I just don't really see the hype about him, to be honest with you. When he obviously come back to the club at League One level, I thought that he was really going to flourish, especially in the system that Nigel Adkins was playing, as obviously Leko is naturally a winger. So I thought in that position, Leko would really do well. And he did, under Nigel Adkins, he really did impress in the wide position. One of our more threatening players in a pretty dreadful squad. But after his injury and then when he returned to the squad, he's just been played all over the gaff. He's been played up front, he's been played at wing back. And to be honest with you, I just don't see the hype in him at all. He's just not impressed me this season whatsoever. Frustrated me more than ever this season compared to the last time we saw him. And yeah, it's a pretty simple one for me, really. I wouldn't have Leko back. And 57% of you on the Instagram polls did agree with me on that one. It's pretty simple for me, really. Leko, it just hasn't been good enough this season. And while people do like him and they do, make the argument that he has played out of position, which I do agree with. I know he has played out of position, but ultimately, even in the positions he has played, you have to say that he's not really done an awful lot to suggest that we should sign him back permanently. Going to fly through this next one fairly quickly because we know exactly what we're going to say with this one. Right back Gunter is out of contract at the end of the season, and I honestly cannot wait for the day when he does leave the football club. 85% of you agree with me in the sense that he should leave the club. He has been in the squad a lot more. I say a lot more, I mean the last couple of matches he's managed to weave his way back into the team in the centre-back position, but yeah. I don't really know how Gunter is still consistently picked for the Wales national team and he's played over 100 games, because the guy, he's just one of the most uninspiring and most unimpressive footballers I've ever watched, to be honest with you. He's just such a frustrating player to watch. He's really, really poor. And yeah, like I said, a bit harsh, but cannot wait for the day where he leaves this football club. I don't think any of you guys would have ever thought you'd see the day where I would be calling for this guy to stay at the football club. Of course, I refer to my best mate, Ben Purrington. Yeah, gonna say it right now, I want him to stay. And I never thought I would ever say that over the last couple of years of completely slating him, just saying he's bang average in the Championship, being terrible. And even last season, I was giving him grief. But I will, eat a slice of humble pie, and I will say that Purrington has had a good year this year. I think he has done very well. It's annoyed me a couple of times this season when he has been played out of position. I remember the times where a name that we'll get to actually next in this video was being played in the left wing back role and he was being moved to a centre back. In my opinion, Purrington is not a centre back. He's either a left back or a wing back, and I think he plays that wing back role really well, because even when he plays in the left back position, he loves to attack. And he's scored 3 goals this season, so he is a goal scoring fullback. And he has had a very good year this year. So while it has frustrated me that he has played out of position and hasn't delivered, in his defence, he has been played out of position. And I think in his correct position, he is a very good, useful player to have. And 72% of you agree with me. Purrington is one of 3 players that I absolutely want to keep, which says a lot, really, that I only want to keep 3 of them. So, yeah, Purrington is one of them, which, like I said, I never thought I'd be saying. I was referring to that was being played in the left wing-back role as opposed to Purrington on some occasions, and we're going to spend as less time talking about this guy as physically possible, is Pape Souare. Now, to be honest with you, I'm not entirely surprised that this one has completely failed. You know, he came to the club in September. He hadn't played a single game of football for Troyes the season before in France. No minutes of professional football whatsoever. He comes to us to compete in the starting 11 with Purrington. And unfortunately, for his case anyway, he just has not delivered, and he's just been a vegetable, to be honest with you. He's been absolutely terrible. 89% of you agree with me. I was actually quite surprised that 11% of you actually wanted him to stay. I don't know whether you were joking or not, but yeah, the sooner Souare gets out of this club, the better. And to be honest with you, has he already left the club? Next up, we have another fullback and another Welsh right back in Adam Matthews. Now, it is pretty safe to say that over the years, Matthews has steadily gone through a decline, but it is a shame to see that because I really do like Matthews. I have liked him at his time with the club. In the Championship 2019-20, he was absolutely fantastic considering we brought him in on a free transfer in September. He really stood out as one of our more consistent performers. Last year wasn't as good, but I still felt had a fairly decent season. This season definitely is worse than the Charlton shirt and definitely has been inconsistent. You know, he's been caught out many times in that defensive line. There seems to be a hesitance sometimes for him to go and, you know, mark his man or go in for a tackle or just let passes go straight through him. You know, he has been quite a weak link in many games this season. And yeah, as much as I do like the guy, I think, again, it's probably time for him to move on. And 57% of you do agree with me with that one. It was quite close, but yeah, I think it is time for Matthews to move on. This next one did completely shock me. I'm going to be honest, it really did shock me as to how this poll went on Instagram. It's Elliot Lee. Is on loan from Luton Town until the end of the season. He came in the summer, and when we picked him up, I looked at his record that he had at Oxford the season before and obviously his time at Luton when they were at League One level, and I thought, this guy is going to be the difference for us this season. And it really did look like it was going to at the very beginning. You know, he was a technically very good player. He got a couple of assists, got some goals. And obviously his chant is absolutely fantastic. He's absolutely brilliant, his chant. But I thought that he really was going to be something special for us this year. When Jackson got the job, or even long before that, he started to fade away. And to be honest, Lee has, in my opinion, not had a great game since that time. He really has completely faded away. You know, only 3 goals, 4 assists. You know, there was the comparison made to Johnnie Williams, which at first I thought was quite insulting to Lee, but now I can understand why people were saying it, and to be honest, I now agree. But what shocked me is how the poll went. 70% of you wanted Lee to stay at the club. I was massively surprised for that because I wouldn't have Lee back. He started so well when the player that we thought he was going to be just completely faded away. And like I said, he's not had a good game for a couple of months at the very least. You know, he just doesn't find the back of the net. He can't score. He doesn't have any assists in him. In most games, he's been very ineffective. And to be honest, I'm quite surprised that he still gets regular minutes in the starting 11 because, in my opinion, he don't deserve to. I don't think he deserves to start games. So, yeah, I was very shocked by that for the fact that 70% of the poll said that he would stay. And someone did actually point out on Twitter as well. Someone shared that poll on Twitter and they were also quite surprised. And yeah, I'm just as surprised as to how one-sided that went. I wouldn't have Lee back come the end of the season, no way. Now we come to the second of 3 players that I would absolutely keep at the club next season, and it is a fairly obvious pick. Our current top goal scorer, Conor Washington, the Northern Ireland international. He wants to stay at the football club. We need to give him a new contract, hands down. He's bagged 9 goals this season, and he's been one of the shining lights in this team this season, we have to say, and we really do miss him. I hope that he does come back from injury very, very soon because we are struggling in the attacking department and he is a massive loss in this team along with Stockley. You know, that Conor Washington-Stockley partnership under Johnnie Jackson when he was caretaker was really, really flourishing. And Washington, while he was quite hot and cold last season, he scored 11 goals last year, but I felt that he would always have one good game in the next. He would be, you know, below par, a bit average. And this season, I have seen glimpses of that as well. You know, there are sides to his game that do need improving, particularly one-on-one situations. How many one-on-ones has he missed? I do like Conor. I think he is a good League One player. After all, he is our top goal scorer, so he is a player that we should be looking to keep hold of. And unsurprisingly, 92% of you do agree with me, an overwhelming majority for Washington to stay at the football club. And yeah, completely agree with that one. I would have Conor back I would give him a new contract, as he is a very useful player to have in and around the squad. Now, these next three are players that I'm not entirely sure of, players that I wouldn't really mind if we kept hold of them, but I also wouldn't mind if we let them go. The first of which is Chelsea loanee Juan Castillo. Now, you would be quite surprised for the fact I've put him in that category, as I wouldn't mind if he stayed, I wouldn't mind if he left. 63% of you voted in favour. 63% of you voted in favour of it. Oh, fuck off. 63% of you voted in favour for him to leave the club. And don't get me wrong, Castillo is one of two loan signings that we made in January that I label as pointless signings, because they're not going to get in the team, particularly the other one, which we will get into in a little bit. But Castillo, he has played a couple of games this season. I think he's played 2 at League One level. I might be wrong there. He obviously started against MK Dons, where he had a fairly good game in my opinion. I thought he actually played quite well, and he did feature in the Papa John's Trophy quarter-final against Hartlepool. Reason why I am torn with Castillo is because he hasn't played, and we can't really make a fair judgment as to whether we should keep him or whether we should let him go. Now, I stand by this opinion, and I'm going to say it for the other guy as well. If we do keep Castillo, provided he gets games, I'm happy for him to stay at the club. But at the moment, with Purrington in the team, and then you've got, obviously, Souare, Souare's not going to be involved in the team anymore. Then you've got Castillo, but then we're playing wingers in the wing-back position, Jaisimi, and then Blackett Taylor was being played in that position before he got injured, who was a very good player, by the way, one of our better performers this year, but is currently injured. So in his absence, you'd naturally think that we would be playing a player, a wing-back or at least a left-back in that position, and that falls to Purrington and Castillo. But Castillo struggles to make the bench in this team. Provided he gets games, I'm happy to keep him, but like I said, ultimately I'm not entirely fussed because he's not played. Next, we come to our club captain, Jason Pearce. Now, this one, I should have been a bit more clear with the poll, because obviously, as we all know, Pearce does have an option at the end of his current deal to take on a coaching role at the club. So to be honest, I should have been more clear in my poll, because in the poll, 70% of you voted for stay, 30% voted for leave. But I have no idea whether you guys have the opinion of he should stay on as a player or as a coach, or he should leave and go on as a coach or leave the club entirely. I should have been a bit more clear with that. I've highlighted Pearce as a not sure, fine either way kind of player, because to be honest with you, I think Pearce will retire come the end of this season. I think he will take up the option of a coaching role at the end of the season. So I think his playing days will come to an end this year. Very good servant of the football club. Of course, he's been at the club since 2016. I have been quite critical of him over the last few years, particularly the last 2 seasons before this one. I thought he was very inconsistent and prone to mistakes. And as our captain, he shouldn't be making those mistakes. And even this season, he does, he has made some shaky, decisions. I still see that he loves to let the ball bounce before dealing with it. But then again, I will say this season, Pearce has had a fairly good year. I felt that while I have been quite critical of him, everything that I do criticise him for, he comes back and proves me wrong. I think Pearce will retire come the end of the season. He won't sign a new contract as a player, but he will take on a coaching role. And the third player in the list of 3 that I've got here on my paper here that I'm not entirely sure about is last year's Player of the Year, Jake ForsterCaskey. Now, this one is going to be very controversial, what I'm talking about here. 87% of you voted in favour for Jake to stay, an overwhelming majority, and I'm not entirely surprised because Jake is a player that we have badly missed this year. Last year, fantastic. Great player at League One level, fantastic midfielder, one of the only midfielders that had high energy in the middle of the park that year. Him and Andrew Shinnie, in my opinion, were the better ones last year, and he deservedly so won Player of the Year. Of course, he has been out with an ACL injury. He is now back in full contact training. Every single season, Jake signs a 1-year deal. He's out of contract at the end of every single season. And that is down to his lack of fitness. Since 2018-19, the season we got promoted, he has been absolutely plagued with injury. He got an ACL injury that year. 19-20, he was in and out with injury, but played very well in the wing-back position, I remember correctly. Last season, stayed fit for the entire season until he picked up another ACL injury, and he's now missed this entire year and probably won't be playing first-team football until probably the end of this month, to be honest. So he's not going to play an awful lot of football this year. So while we can't criticise him for this year, the reason why I'm not sure, he is a very, very good player, but you do have to sit there and say, when is it time for us to call it quits? Because he's never fit. You know, his fitness is a big problem. He is a very good player, don't get me wrong. We need players that are going to be fit and players that are going to be playing regularly in this team. In my opinion, ForsterCaskey, he does walk into that midfield at the moment that we have. And he's a very good player, like I've said many times. But like I said, he's never fit. So, in honesty, I'm fine either way with what happens. If he stays, great. We've got a very good League One player on our hands. But if he leaves, it would be gutting to see him go, but ultimately we do need players that are going to stay fit. Those last three were players I'm not sure about. These next three are players that I absolutely want to leave the club. And the first one is a fairly obvious one. Mason Burstow, of course, was a Charlton player until he made the move to Chelsea in the January transfer window, transfer deadline day. He comes back to the club on loan until the end of the season. We know exactly what's going to happen with this one. Burstow will be leaving the club. He will go back to Chelsea and will be a part of their academy setup. No real point going over the poll. 64% of you did agree, though, in the sense that he should leave the club. And going to be totally honest with you here, a lot of you may have felt that we could have got a lot more money out of him. But to be honest with you, 1.7 million for a player of Burstow's calibre, we've pulled Chelsea's pants down. Overall, he's done very, very well over the course of this season. You know, as an 18-year-old coming into the team under a lot of pressure, you know, with our strikers underperforming or being injured, he has done very well in that sense. Since he's come back from Chelsea, I did make the claim that his head wouldn't be in the game, and I've just not been impressed. And I've not really seen anything from him that suggests he is a £1.7 million player. His first touch is awful. His shooting has been poor recently. He can't find the back of the net. Then again, most of our team can't find the back of the net, as we haven't scored in 6 hours of football. The last 4 games without a goal, which is just absolutely shocking. But our backup goalkeeper, Stephen Henderson, is out of contract at the end of the season. Of course, he did make his return to the club from Crystal Palace. Henderson doesn't have the same quality that he once had, the quality that we saw of him the first time round. And yeah, pretty simply, I would not offer Henderson a new contract. 57% of you do agree with me. It was quite close, but yeah, it's safe to say Henderson is getting on a bit now and he doesn't really have the same quality. He has played only 2 League One matches this season, so obviously he hasn't played an awful amount of games, but in those 2 games he played, Crewe and Cheltenham, he made the same mistake in both games that led to goals. If we rate Ashley Maynard-Brewer as highly as we do, quite plain and simply, he has to come back from Ross County and be our second choice goalkeeper. So Henderson, in my opinion, is out of the equation. And the same can also be said for Ben Watson. I would happily pay for his taxi out of the football club. Why we decided to keep him opposed to Darren Pratley is completely beyond me. 87% of you agree with me. Honestly, he's just been so poor. He's been so poor. I know he's not played an awful lot of games this season, but ultimately, I'd just get rid. Just get rid. And let's just move on to someone else, please. I just, like I said, I just can't wait for him and Gunter to leave the club. If those two stay past this season, everything I know about this club is completely wrong, honestly. I mean, everything was wrong when we decided to let Pratley go to Leyton Orient and decided to keep Watson, because at least Pratley was a leader and, of course, was a good player. I've not seen anything of that from Ben Watson. I mean, I've seen a couple of good games from him, but nothing to suggest that he's worthy of staying at this football club. No way. Get out. We come to our second pointless loan signing that we made in the January transfer window. This one more so than the other one, Juan Castillo, because this guy has not played any football whatsoever since coming to this football club. Of course, it is Tottenham Hotspur's Nuno John. The England under-18 starlet has not played any football for Charlton whatsoever. And he falls, in my opinion, in the exact same category as Juan Castillo. Going to say the exact same thing that I said about Juan. I'd be happy to keep him as long as he plays, because there is no doubt he is a good player. And he just hasn't played, and I don't think he will play. 58% of you voted in favour for him to leave the club, but I have the same opinion of him as I had of Juan Castillo. A player that, if he does get games, I'd be happy for him to keep, but not fussed if he was to leave, because the geezer is not playing in the squad right now. And a player that falls in the same category as Jake ForsterCaskey is centre-half Ryan Innis. He is out of contract at the end of the season, signed a 2-year deal from Crystal Palace last year. The one thing that Innis has against him is fitness and injuries. That's 2 things, but they fall under the same sort of boat. He is never, ever fit. And I do stand by this claim. When he is fit, he's one of the best centre-backs in this league, and there is no one that can ever tell me otherwise. He is a big presence in the centre-half and is a player that we are missing right now in this team. But once again, like ForsterCaskey, despite the fact there was an overwhelming majority, 90% of you voted for him to stay at the club, and he does want to stay, which obviously is fantastic. When is the day that we call it quits? Because Innis is just never fit. That is the one thing that he has against him. He's a fantastic player, would love him to stay, would be gutted if he did leave, But ultimately, we do have to raise the question, when do we call it quits? Because ultimately, we need players that are going to stay fit and they're going to be consistently in the starting 11 or their whereabouts, you know, consistently competing to get into the team. And at the moment, Innis can't do that because he's never fit. He's always on the fucking injury table. We're coming towards the end of the players now, and we come to the third and final player that I would absolutely keep at this football club past next season. And honestly, this one is going to be very controversial. It's very controversial for the fact that I've picked this guy, but it is Akinfamowo. Now, I know that he hasn't been as good this season compared to the last. I know a lot of people don't really like the guy, but to be honest with you, I would still keep him. He did very, very well last year. This year, been a bit shaky, prone to a couple mistakes here and there, some poor performances, some average performances, but I still think he is a good League One defender. And ultimately, Norwich, they're not exactly going to give him games next season, regardless of what league they're going to be in. If they're in the Prem, he ain't going to play. If they're in the Championship, he ain't going to play because, let's face it, he's not really done anything to suggest that he is worthy of playing Championship football. And ultimately, we have an option to buy. 88% of you did agree with me on the Instagram poll that he should stay at the club. So it'd be interesting to get you guys' thoughts. Would you keep Famowo? Would you let him go? Let me know in the comments below. It is quite a controversial one, but yeah, while he hasn't been great this season compared to last, I would still keep him as a solid centre-half option for next year. And then to wrap up this video, we come to the only out-of-contract player on this list that is currently away from the club, out on loan, and that is striker Josh Davison. He is currently out on loan at League Two side Swindon Town, where he seems to be making a name for himself, which I'm not entirely surprised by, to be honest with you. He has done really, really well at his time for Swindon so far, which I am very happy for him for. You know, it's very, very good that he is getting goals at League Two level because it is a massive confidence boost for him. You know, he needed to go away from the club and get some regular minutes, first of all, but also needed to try and find his feet and get some goals, and he is doing that at the moment for Swindon, so I'm very, very happy for him. However, I still stand by the opinion that he's not good enough for this club anymore, and I think that it is time for him to move on. He was actually the closest poll in this entire video. 55% of you did agree with me that he should leave, but it was very, very close. Now, the reason why I think Davison should leave is the one thing that he is lacking is the goals, and he just can't do it at League One level. He just did not do it. You know, he bagged 2 goals under Nigel Adkins. He took his chance really, really well. He needed to go out on loan, get some confidence. He is doing that with Swindon at the moment. But ultimately, for me, I just don't think he's good enough for League One level. He's not good enough for this club. And I think that he does need to get a move to League Two and make that league his own, really. Whether he does make the move to Swindon permanently, I'm not entirely sure. So there you have it. There are the Charlton Athletic players that are out of contract at the end of the season, and my thoughts as to whether we should keep them or whether we should let them go. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, can you possibly leave a like, subscribe if you are new to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you are notified of every time I upload a new video. What do you guys think? Let's get talking. Get talking in the comments below. Who should stay and who should leave? Once again, apologies for not uploading, but at least you now know why I went missing for 2 weeks. But I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Thank you again for watching. This has been Tyler Ronington. Have a nice day, and I will see you all in the next video. Take it easy, stay safe, and I'll see you all later.